How did you decide on a route? Is there a lot of off-path navigation? The majority of participants are in their 60s and only around 1/5 are women. This has always put me off, and I feel like a young solo woman is not really the participant they are looking for. Would you recommend doing it? Interesting one, and maybe also a bit controversial one, we'll see. Hi, my name is Elli. I'm a long-distance hiker and backpacker. Enjoying a cup of coffee with a view is my absolute happy place. And this is Otto, an adopted stray dog, crisps lover, and the best hiking companion. Come join us as we explore the great outdoors, one trail at a time. Hi everyone, and welcome to a new video. As most of you probably know, I took part in the Great Outdoors Challenge in Scotland this year, which is a self-supported hiking event where participants cross Scotland from the west coast to the east coast. And after my videos, I got quite a few questions from you. So let's talk about that and let's go. Before we get into the questions, two little side notes. If you've clicked on this video wondering about Otto and my walk on the coast to coast, about the videos about that, they will start next week. I've made a little mini series about our time there, so definitely stay tuned for that. We had an incredible time. I really loved the coast to coast. But today I basically want to wrap up my videos on the Great Outdoors Challenge, and I decided to do it now because the registrations for next year's TGO Challenge open in just under 2 weeks on October 5th. So I thought, yeah, this might be a great time to answer your questions. I want to say a big thank you for your support of my videos about the Great Outdoors Challenge videos. The videos were so well received, and that made me really happy that I got to share this different special adventure with you. You've been enjoying the videos, leaving so many lovely comments, kind words of encouragement, and yeah, supporting the hike and also my future hikes with Otto on Buy Me a Coffee. That was really special, and I'm so grateful. And now, without further ado, let's get to the questions. What inspired you doing the Great Outdoors Challenge with the challenge rules instead of just doing your own event? That's a really interesting question because, as you know, I usually hike with Otto, my dog, and we've hiked over 5,000 kilometers over the past 2.5 years. So it wasn't really typical for me to do a bigger hike without Otto. But that was one of the reasons why I chose the Great Outdoors Challenge. I wanted something where I could focus a bit on my own hike, because obviously if I'm with Otto, I adapt to his pace and his needs, obviously. But oftentimes I feel like I could go a bit further maybe, or I could do a bit more technical terrain and things like that. So the Great Outdoors Challenge was a good option for me to have, yeah, this like limited time frame where I could do my own hike, like doing more remote hiking, a bit more technical terrain, longer distances. Why didn't I do my own event? It's not competitive, obviously, but there's still a time frame. Like if you want to successfully complete the challenge, you only have a limited number of days, 15 days. And I kind of liked that thought, that because normally, for example, if I don't feel it, I usually don't put a lot of pressure to myself, like if I can't finish a hike or if it takes longer, so be it. But I thought it would be interesting to have this like set deadline, and that thought of pushing myself a bit more, like hiking, even if it's a bit hard, just to maybe push my own limits a little bit. And I actually ended up doing that because I got a really bad cold during the challenge, but still I pushed through, and that's something that I normally wouldn't have done, but still I now feel like I know my body even better, like my limits, what I can achieve and what I maybe can't achieve. Just some sort of like outside, not pressure, because it wasn't really pressure, but this like feeling, okay, it's like there's this deadline, something that pushed me a little bit more, and that's something that I really liked about the challenge. And another reason why I decided to do the challenge is also this like feeling of being part of something bigger, like not being just on my own, but meeting people here and there, doing the same thing, having this sense of camaraderie, and it really was that. I really like hiking on my own during the day, but then again in some evenings or at specific points like Primar, meeting other challenges, meeting them again after a few days, sharing stories. Yeah, that was really nice and something I had hoped that it would be like that, and really was like that, and that's, yeah, it was just it was very, very nice having this sense of community. And obviously, number 3, I think for me it was a good option to go off the beaten path a little bit, because part of the challenge is to create your own route across Scotland. And I love hiking in Scotland. There are so many areas that I still want to go to. But then again, how often do you really create your own route? Oftentimes it just find something on a hiking website or on a blog, and you just are doing that hike, but just drafting a route from scratch on your own. For me personally, something that I probably wouldn't normally do, not in this extent. So yeah, that was the reason why I thought, okay, this is a really cool thing, something very different. The next question, and that's one that I got quite a few times: how did you decide on a route? That's something that was a bit difficult for me too, because obviously in Scotland there's so many really, really beautiful areas, and it can feel kind of hard to decide where to go. On the website of the Great Outdoors Challenge, I think I read it there, they advise you to start with a road map and just put it on the floor so that you have so that you can see the bigger picture and just see different areas, things that, I don't know, you may be interested in seeing. And I started doing that as well, just having a map, seeing all the start points on the west coast and all the finishing points, and then just see, okay, what's on the way? Is there an area that I've read something about or that's very famous, like for example the area around Glencoe, which if you've never been there, that's very impressive and I think a really nice area. Or do I want to walk past a famous distillery to maybe visit that? Or if there's famous castles, doesn't matter, just so that you have a sort of bigger picture. Or you could ask people on the Facebook group, for example, or people that you're maybe knowing or that are familiar with the area. In my case, I asked on my Instagram page, and a lot of people, maybe if you're watching that, thank you so much, commented and basically recommended their favorite areas, clans, and something like that. So I just had this big map, and I was basically circling in the areas that people recommended. And then obviously I had my own areas that I really wanted to see, like Neustadt, where I've never been to before. And then I had this idea, okay, there's Eilean Donnen Castle in Dorney, which I've visited before, which is a really nice spot. And then I saw, okay, you could actually finish at Dunnottar Castle on the east coast, starting point and end point established. And then I thought, okay, what's an interesting area? Probably I want to walk through Primar, for example, so I circled that. And then someone recommended to go through Glenfeshie, which was incredible, and I can't recommend it enough if you've never visited the area. So I circled that, and then obviously I went into detail looking on the Explorer and Land Ranger maps to see if there are footpaths, rivers, etc., and then just slowly building my route. So that was basically my process. Another great thing to look for is, for example, on the Walk Highlands website, where there are a lot of walks, descriptions of walks, routes, etc., where you can read about the conditions, you can see pictures, how it looks, what's special. You can also use existing routes, like for example, a very famous option that quite a few challengers are doing is part of the Glen Affric trail from Shielbridge, going east to Cannock and then towards Loch Ness. So obviously that's always an option if you're seeing a trail that you can maybe use a part of or modify a bit. That's also a good starting point to create your own route. Then the next question related to that: how much route planning did you have to do in advance? Is there a lot of off-path navigation? You actually have to plan your whole route in advance. It's about 3 months is the deadline before the event itself. You have to submit your route sheet, and on that you basically have to describe your route, really going into detail using the grid reference system and just describing the route itself, which for me was very interesting. I know how to read a map and how to use a compass, but for planning my routes, I usually just use GPX like programs and just plot my route there. But this was very interesting, really giving like describing the route, and I learned so much by doing that. Something like, okay, I'm going to take the minor route east of to go to wherever, or I'm going to ford the river at this like grid reference. And as far as pathless or off-path navigation goes, I think that highly depends on the route that you're choosing. It's probably, I don't know, from my experience from hiking in Scotland, I think it would probably be quite hard to avoid pathless sections completely, because some, even if there's a little like footpath on a map, that doesn't mean that it's traveled a lot, so it can be a bit overgrown, or it can be a bit intermittent. So I think it's quite hard to avoid it at all times, unless you're really going for like 4x4 tracks and also like minor road. Maybe it could be done by doing that, but obviously you will miss out on a lot of like the beautiful, remote, vast landscape. So I feel like you're probably always going to have a little bit of off-path navigation. But that being said, you can always check, for example, on the Walk Highlands website, if you can find a walk there. Or oftentimes, like walking up to Munros, that's over pathless terrain, but in reality you will see a bit where people have gone, and May is a quite popular month for hiking in Scotland, so there weren't many days where I didn't see anyone, and even on the pathless sections where there wasn't a path on the maps, it was not that hard to navigate, especially if you're going the more like traveled route. For example, in my case, that was from Loch Ossian to Culra, Bothy, over the pass. There's a pathless section on there, but in reality it was kind of obvious where to go. So I feel like even if there's pathless terrain, oftentimes it's not that like intimidating. The organizers can also help you with that, to see if even if it's pathless, but it's maybe hiked a lot because it's in a popular area. So I don't think that's something to be worried about. What interaction do you have with the organizers before and during the walk? What's the TGO process? And then wondering what the TGO route vetters, coordinators thought of your route. First off, for the TGO process, you're basically registering for the event, which, by the way, starts in less than 2 weeks. During the registration process, you have to give your previous hiking, backpacking experience, so that the coordinators can check if the event is maybe too much for you, or if you can take part of it. And if your application and registration is accepted, you have a couple of months to prepare your route sheet. As I've said, it's still in a like written form. If you're planning with GPX files or a GPX program, you can also, in addition to that, send in your GPX files as well, obviously. You have a couple of months to do that. And then after you have submitted your route sheet, there's a vetting system in place. Like there's people local people experienced in hiking, backpacking, that are familiar with the area, that are basically checking your route sheet if they think it's doable, if there are some sort of big issues with it, like really scary, dangerous river or potentially dangerous river crossings, or if a footbridge that you've seen on the map is maybe gone. Give you advice, but also in case there's really like a problem with your route of any kind, they will ask you to change the route or to modify some elements. For me, when I first submitted my route, I got the feedback that the coordinators apparently found my route quite interesting, especially because for the first couple of days I wasn't even heading east, but instead heading south and even more west before actually heading east. And they told me that I had drafted quite a tough route, and it was quite long. It wasn't the longest, I think. Usually routes are around 280, 320 kilometers, but they only asked me to make revisions for 2 days, where I had made things harder for myself, like choosing a longer, more difficult route that I wasn't even intentionally doing, but I just didn't see another option on the map, and they told me about that. And I had to revise one or two of my alternative routes, because whenever your route is going above a certain height, like elevation, if you're doing moonrows, for example, or there are a couple of harder bits, for example, if you're crossing the forts of Arn, because that can be really hard or even impossible to cross in spade, you have to give a foul weather alternative. That's how they call it. So basically an option that's more low level, avoiding difficult forts, river crossings, that you always have to give if you're doing more technical, more high level walks, something like that. But they will tell you when you need a foul weather alternative and when you don't need one. And for one or two of my foul weather alternative routes, I had given an option that wasn't really great or was even harder and longer, so I had to revise that. But other than that, they will give you a bit of advice, and in my case they told me that I had a bit of a longer day and they advised me to start from Shielbridge instead of Dorney to make my first day a bit shorter. But basically in the end it was my own decision if I would take this advice or if I would stick with my initial start point, and I did that. They will either ask you to make a revision to the route or they will give you advice, and you can decide for yourself if you're doing that or if you're sticking with your initial plan. And then after you've made all your revisions that have been asked, or maybe you want to change it yourself, you will send in your final route that you're going to do during the event. And then during the event, every participant has to phone the coordinators at specific points. I think you need at least 4 days where you need to call or send a text to the coordinators, basically just letting them know where you are, that you're doing okay, or how you're doing. That's also obviously for safety reasons, because if you fail to phone them on a specific day, obviously they will start checking if someone has seen you or what's going on, so that you don't really get lost in case something happens. So that was my contact with the coordinators, and I really have to say they have been really, really helpful. Also, if you're planning on doing the challenge, there are a lot of resources on the website, and I think they even have videos about the route planning and advice. If you still have questions, they're really open. You can just send them an email and talk to them about your route, your plans and everything. And maybe one last thing about the route planning or my advice. Don't be intimidated by that. I know that it can be a bit crazy where to even start and how can I do it? Is that a good option or anything? I have been really intimidated myself before starting, and it was really difficult for me to get into that. But you don't really have to worry, because worst case, if you have made a mistake or if the route is not doable or something, or there's some safety concerns or something like that, you won't be kicked out of the challenge. You can just revise your route, draft a new route, or make amendments. Don't let this stop you. It is a bit of work to draft your route and to make the revisions, but it's nothing to be worried about. And if you made a mistake, you can just change it. They will just tell you. There's not something that you only have for one shot and you have to nail it for the first time. Just revise your route until it's great and until it works. Then the next question, and this is a really interesting one and maybe also a bit controversial one, we'll see. I would love to do the Great Outdoors Challenge, and it would be great to know your thoughts on this. On the stats on the TGO website, it says that the majority of participants are in their 60s and only around 1/5 are women. This has always put me off, and I feel like a young solo woman is not really the participant they or the TGO participant community are looking for. That was actually something that I heard as well when I told people that I have known from other hikes that are familiar with the event. I had quite a few people telling me, it's just older men hiking, drinking. It's a weird event. Everyone will be drunk all the time in bothies, and I don't know, it just had people tell me that. But then again, I really love Scotland, and I obviously wanted to look for myself. And I also think yes, there are more men than women that are doing it. There's only 1 in 4 participants that are women. But then again, I think like if there's an event like that and if no women are registering for it, you will never change this, like the event. If everyone thinks, okay, it's just maybe more like for men that are doing it, things will never change. So I thought, yeah, I might just register and show through my videos how it is, how I'm doing it, even though I'm in the minority in this event. So I really get this feeling that, okay, is it going to be weird? And another part is obviously, as a younger female solo hiker, you will stand out a bit, because most people doing the challenge are, I think, above the age of 50. Women doing it solo without a partner or in a group are not that common in the challenge. But in my opinion, this shouldn't stop you. I felt so welcome, and it didn't feel at all like it's more catered towards older men walking. It's a great community. It didn't feel weird at all. Obviously, there will always be people where you probably don't have that much in common if people are much older than you, obviously. But still, I feel like because everyone's passionate about hiking, and hiking in Scotland, you will always have some sort of like common ground, and it's really easy to talk to people. And I didn't have any problems like whatsoever. I didn't feel like I would stand out because there will always be people doing it for the first time. There will always be people doing it on their own. There will always be like other women doing it solo. There are like groups of people that know each other and are hiking together and see each other there every year. But I think, and that's how I experience it, there wasn't this like big group and everyone is knowing each other, and then here I am and I'm not knowing anyone yet, and I'm just like the outsider all the time. That wasn't my experience at all. Wherever I met other challenges, there always were people that knew each other before, but there were always people on their own, people that maybe kept to themselves, preferred having dinner on their own, being on their first challenge, doing it solo as well. So in my opinion, it wasn't difficult at all to meet other people, and I felt very, very welcome, especially by the coordinators as well. And in my opinion, it didn't feel like it's just an event for middle-aged men. And then the last question for this video, and also maybe something that ties in with the last question about the community, the group thing, whether or not you will stand out as a first-timer, as a solo female hiker. Would you recommend doing it, and do you have any tips? Yes, I would really recommend it. It's been a really, really great experience. Just everything. The organization has been great. You will get so many helpful tips, things that you probably wouldn't get otherwise. Like if you're just planning your route on your own, you may be going not really off the beaten path because you don't have anyone that's giving you advice on the route, on the conditions, on the terrain. So I feel like this is a really nice option to push your limits a little bit if you want to do that, for example. And yeah, the organization has been great, really, really helpful, and I thoroughly would recommend it. For me personally, it's been a really great mix of hiking on my own, making my own decisions, having my own route, being on my own during the day, but then also having this community, meeting other like-minded people, for example, in Primar at specific like strategic villages somewhere along the route, or the celebration dinner at the end, which has been really great to just talk to other people, meet other hikers. A bit like doing a race, like an event, and you're knowing that you're part of this, you've finished this, but without this like competitiveness and everyone for themselves. But just it's a really great event, and I really would recommend doing it. Also with the route planning, you learn so much. And last but not least, my biggest tip or advice if you're planning on doing the challenge would be to decide if you want to do a more social route or if you want to be more on your own, because that ties in with the last question about will you stick out, especially as a solo female hiker? Is everyone like hiking more or less in a big group? And obviously you can decide or plan your route either to be a bit more social or to be a bit more remote if you're preferring to be on your own, not walk with potentially a bigger group of people. And what I mean by that is on the website they have a lot of statistics, and it shows the most popular starting points, which I think is like Melek and Oban on the West Coast. That's where by far most challenges start. And obviously people will go a bit in different directions, some going over Munros, but in general, obviously, these, especially the first days, will obviously be potentially a bit more crowded with more people around, maybe, having a bit more this like feeling of, okay, there's maybe a group of people that are doing it. So depending if you want to be a bit more amongst other people, my advice would be to look for the more popular starting point and start your route from there. If on the other hand you want this feeling of, okay, I want to have this like challenge for myself, to push myself a bit more, to have a bit more like more remote terrain, choose one of the start points where not a lot of people start. For example, Torridon or Dorney, I think that's not that popular. I think Sheelbridge is quite popular, but there are a couple of spots, mainly in the like northern part of the Highlands, that aren't very popular. I think some start points have only like a handful of challenges starting from there. So obviously it will be much more remote if you start from there. In the later part of the challenge, obviously a lot of challenges, no matter where they start, will go through villages like Primar or Tafside. So if you're basically going there later in the challenge, you will have a bit of both worlds, like having this first part more on your own, and then for the later part, meeting a lot of other challenges there. And tip number 2, and that's something that I definitely would change if I would register again, which I'm probably going to do, not next year though, but the year after probably, is to plan a rest day, because that's totally possible. You don't have to walk every day. I think that's very, very helpful, because obviously a lot can happen on a longer hike. For example, in my case, I had this horrible cold, and I felt like I couldn't really take a rest day, because then I would really fall behind on my itinerary and wouldn't have made it to the finishing point in time. But if I had planned a rest day, obviously that gives you an extra day, like time to catch up if you're falling behind, if you're running behind. Or, and that's the great thing in my opinion, if you don't need the rest day, you could just do a little day trip. And I've met a couple of challengers who did that, who had a rest day, for example, in Primar. That would be great to just do a couple of Munros somewhere in the Cairngorms, like basically towards the middle or the second part of the challenge, to just have that option. Like if you're not feeling great, you can just have a rest day, or you can use that day to catch up if you're running behind. And if you're feeling great, you can do a couple of Munros or another like day trip, day hike without a heavy pack. Okay, this is it for today's video. I really hope I could answer your questions. If you have any more questions whatsoever about the Great Outdoors Challenge, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you've liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the channel. And then I will hopefully see you next week for the start of our little mini video series about the Coast to Coast walk. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for following our adventures. Happy hiking and see you soon. Bye!